Hello, everyone. For this installment of Curriculum of Fear, I thought I would go over a pair of articles regarding some educational initiatives that crossed my path recently. First up, let's talk about Idaho. You may remember from a couple of months back that I did a video on Boise State University regarding their Black graduation controversy, in which they held something they titled as Black Graduation for Black Graduates, seemingly trying to exclude anyone who wasn't black, which kind of goes against that whole, legal thing. Well, Boise State is back in the news again with an article from the College Fix, which I thought I would read to you, because, English major and all that. Public university tells professors not to grade based on merit. Faculty workshops designed to persuade teachers not to grade based upon merit are popping up at universities from Washington, D.C. to the potato capital of the world. Idaho's Boise State University is hosting an event next week entitled Inclusive Teaching Means Inclusive Grading Too. It's listed as part of the BUILD certificate program, or Boise State Uniting for Inclusion and Leadership in Diversity. The program's stated purpose is to help participants gain knowledge of, demonstrate commitment to, and become a campus leader in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. The College Fix attempted to obtain more information on the faculty workshop, which is hidden behind a campus login screen, but the administration did not respond to email or phone calls. Although the specifics of this event are shrouded in secrecy, other events held by different universities shed light on it. BSU's event has the exact same name as a previous University of Tennessee Knoxville faculty workshop. It was aimed to, quote, engage instructors in conversations and activities designed to foreground diversity and inclusion in considerations of assessment and grading practices, unquote. The University of Michigan held a faculty workshop with a near-identical name as well. The Center for Research on Learning and Teaching stated on its website that attending teachers would, quote, be asked to review their own practices, unquote, on grading throughout the event. This workshop is reminiscent of one held in February at American University designed to teach faculty, quote, how to assess writing without judging its quality, unquote. I'm gonna read that again. How to assess writing without judging its quality. Okay. Trying to avoid an aneurysm. Titled Grading Ain't Just Grading, and promising to help teachers rethink, quote, writing assessment ecologies towards anti-racist ends, unquote, the workshop warned that, quote, the practices of grading writing maintained white language supremacy, unquote. BSU has been in the news recently regarding its woke faculty-focused activities. The taxpayer-funded institution is currently hosting a book circle designed to, quote, dig deep into ourselves to explore the ways in which we all, as individuals, sometimes unknowingly, support racism and white supremacy, unquote. Better yet, participation in the book circle, quote, counts for 2 opportunities towards the BUILD certificate program, unquote. Other upcoming events in the BUILD program are hidden behind a login by the university as well. Quote, implicit bias in the academic workplace appears to be a recurring faculty workshop, judging by the March 2019 date on a public document the Fix located. It tells attendees that previous experiences and, quote, messages that are fed to us via news and popular culture may cause us to create an inequitable environment, unquote. Quote, why are you reacting that way? Unpacking identity development and its impact on interactions in the classroom and the workplace, seeks to, quote, give participants opportunities to examine the lens they use to interact with others and understand why there is resistance, unquote. Finally, how accessible is your syllabus asks, quote, "How accessible is your syllabus? That is, to what extent is it able to be used by all intended users, each with differing capabilities?" Unquote. Okay, so I'm still caught on that one particular instance up there. Um, the workshop that asks the question, or I should say, tries to promote the idea of how to assess writing without judging its quality. So we're just going to eliminate standards of quality in writing. If you are a writing professor, if you went to school for many years to get your teacher's certificate, if you went through all of the English programs and you got your master's and you got a literature degree and God knows what else, you've spent tens upon tens of thousands of dollars for an education so that you can be an English professor or a writer or both. And now you're being encouraged to toss aside quality in writing as a metric by which to grade a student's writing. Well, in that case, you might as well not even be there. You might as well not even have a degree in English or literature or writing comprehension or anything. You might as well just take the kids in, give them some crayons, and then pass them through the class. Because who cares about quality? They could be writing brilliant essays, or they could be writing bad texts. It doesn't matter anymore. So, yes, Boise State University is quickly becoming the bastion of the abandonment of merit and critical thinking while championing racism and discrimination. Very good to know. I'm sure a lot of parents will feel real happy about putting their money towards their kids' tuition at Boise State University. Now, let's turn our gaze slightly to the west of famous potatoes to the Evergreen State and the Seattle School District. Seattle schools lead controversial push to rehumanize math. Rehumanize math. Okay. The Seattle School District is planning to infuse all K-12 math classes with ethnic studies questions that encourage students to explore how math has been appropriated by Western culture and used in systems of power and oppression, a controversial move that puts the district at the forefront of a movement to rehumanize math. A movement to rehumanize math by effectively vilifying it. Okay. The district's proposed framework outlines strands of discussion that teachers should incorporate into their classes. One leads students into exploring math's roots, quote, in the ancient histories of people and empires of color, unquote. Another asks how math and science have been used to oppress and marginalize people of color, and who holds power in a math classroom. Well, one would hope that the math teacher is the one who holds power in the math classroom, but I digress. Another theme focuses on resistance and liberation, encouraging students to recognize the mathematical practices and contributions of their own communities, and looking at how math has been used to free people from oppression. Seattle's proposals land as schools all over the country are discussing the role ethnic studies should play in their curricula. In most places, if schools offer ethnic studies at all, it's usually in a standalone course in high school. But increasingly, schools and districts are starting to sprinkle ethnic studies across the K-12 spectrum. Seattle is taking a highly unusual approach by weaving the field's multicultural and political questions not just through all grade levels, but into all subjects. Seattle's 4-page framework is still in the proposal stage. If adopted, its ideas would be included in existing math classes as part of the district's broader effort to infuse ethnic studies into all subjects across the K-12 spectrum. Tracy Castro Gill, Seattle's ethnic studies director, said her team hopes to have frameworks completed in all subjects by June for board approval. If the frameworks are approved, teachers would be expected to incorporate those ideas and questions into the math they teach beginning next fall, Castro-Gill said. No district-wide or mandated math ethnic studies curriculum is planned, but groups of teachers are working with representatives of local community organizations to write instructional units for teachers to use if they wish, she said. Quote, Seattle is definitely on the forefront with this, said Robert Q. Berry III, the president of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Quote, Seattle is definitely on the forefront with this, said Robert Q. Berry III, the president of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Quote, what they're doing follows the line of work we hope we can move forward as we think about the history of math and who contributes to that, and also about deepening students' connection with identity and agency, unquote. Seattle's framework reflects ideas and practices that the NCTM has outlined in publications such as last year's, quote, Catalyzing Change in High School Mathematics, unquote, Berry noted. That report argues, among other things, for renewed focus on helping students see how math affects the lives of millions in social media algorithms, polling data, and world finance. But what some see as leading-edge work, others view as misguided. Seattle's proposed guidelines caused a furor on social media after Rod Dreher, an editor for the American Conservative, blogged about them on September 30th. In a Twitter thread dubbed #WokeMath, critics sneered at the district's blend of math and oppression and zeroed in on parts of the framework that ask, quote, how important is it to be right, unquote, and, quote, who gets to say if an answer is right, unquote. Seattle talk radio show host Dory Monson jumped into the fray with his own blog asking, quote, did you realize when you subtracted one number from another that you were disenfranchising people by using Western math, unquote? Liz Wheeler, a host on One America News, tweeted that Seattle, quote, is now teaching kids as young as kindergarten that math is racist, unquote. Castro-Gill said that one elementary school has been trying out some of the ideas of the new framework, but she wouldn't name the school, quote, because of the hate and vitriol, unquote, on social media. She said opponents have misconstrued the proposed guidelines, especially the section about right answers. Quote, of course there are right answers in math. We're not saying there aren't, Castro-Gill said. What we're saying is that there are many ways of reaching conclusions, and that process should include dialogue. If a student got the right answer, we should celebrate that ingenuity and intelligence instead of telling them there is only one way to get to that right answer, unquote. Okay, stopping for a second. We're talking about mathematics, right?
Right.
I mean, there are different methods of doing math, like Common Core versus your classical mathematics, but ultimately there is one way to get to the answer in mathematics, because unless or until you're getting down to some very obscure aspects of mathematics, 1 + 1 always leads you to 2. But again, I digress. When too many Black and Latino students see no place for themselves in math and science, Castro-Gill said, it's important to be explicit about how their own cultures contribute to math and how they can use it to make their communities and the world better. Or you could just teach that mathematics is a universal language that transcends race and culture and ethnicity, etc. That is the unifying language of the universe and reality, which I know sounds a little poetic, but then I am an English major. Seattle's new math framework grew out of a 2017 community campaign led by the NAACP for more attention to ethnic studies. Its work to blend math and ethnic studies draws on conversations that have been unfolding for decades in the field of ethnomathematics, which focuses on cultural links to math, and in a movement known as, quote, rehumanizing math, unquote. Ethnomathematics, which studies the intersection of math and culture, took shape in the late 1970s, introduced by Brazilian math professor Uberratan D'Ambrosio. I might have said that correctly. Leading thinkers in the field now include Linda Ferrotto at the University of Hawaii at Manoa and Filiberto Barajas Lopez at the University of Washington School of Education in Seattle. More recently, some scholars, most prominently Rochelle Gutierrez at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, have begun advocating for a, quote, rehumanizing, unquote, of mathematics, which places dynamics such as race and oppression at the center of conversations about math and culture. Gutierrez noted that math organizations that focus on the preparation and oversight of math teachers back key concepts that appear in Seattle's proposed guidelines. The Association of Mathematics Teacher Educators Standards for Teacher Preparation, for instance, say new math teachers should, quote, understand the roles of power, privilege, and oppression in the history of mathematics education. Quote, math education has been very focused on access and closing the achievement gap around grit and growth mindset. Those ideas are centered around individuals and ways of thinking they need to adopt. We haven't focused enough on identity or systems of power, Gutierrez said. Quote, students should be able to see themselves in the curriculum, recognize math as a tool for making their lives better, and question what math is and the purpose of math, she said. A top official in one math organization agreed to talk only anonymously about the new framework to avoid becoming part of the controversy. Starting the conversation with a sigh, he said it's too bad that Seattle blended important areas with highly controversial ones. Quote, we all want students of color to be included, believe they can learn math, and see themselves as mathematicians, he said. It's important for them to learn about great contributions to mathematics from all cultures, Indian and Chinese and Babylonian. But you don't need to talk about liberation and oppression and how Western mathematics has somehow taken over. It just turns people off and makes the goal of being inclusive that much tougher, unquote. Other leaders in math education welcomed Seattle's push to incorporate political and cultural questions into math, and some said they've been including similar questions in their teaching for years. Barry, of the NCTM, recalls an exercise he did with aspiring math teachers when he taught at the University of Virginia. Barry gave his students a drawing of a square. One half was filled with red dots, the other half with blue dots. Students had to find various ways of dividing the space, some structured to let the red dots win, and others to let the blue dots win. Quote, it was a lesson in gerrymandering, Barry said. It showed how we can create structures with geometry to get the outcomes we want politically. We can construct them for advantage or disadvantage. Peggy Brookins, the president and CEO of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, said she got pushback to culturally sensitive strategies as a high school math teacher in the mid-1980s. Capitalizing on her school's location near NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Brookins linked her lessons to the astronauts' work. As her students studied exponents and the power of 10, she had them calculate the speed at which rockets left Earth's orbit and led a discussion of how astronauts of color had struggled to find roles in NASA's programs. Quote, my principal came and asked me to step outside, recalled Brookins. Quote, he said a parent had called and said he didn't send his daughter to school to learn about black people, unquote. Her principal backed her up, telling the angry parent that there were many private schools in town if he wished to transfer his daughter, but the experience stuck with Brookins. Quote, I get what Seattle's doing. I get where they're coming from, she said. People need to realize culturally responsive pedagogy in ways they haven't historically, unquote. Or you could be using mathematics as a Trojan horse to start introducing a social ideology into your students, shame some for being what they are, and elevate others for being what they are, absent any personal merit, but simply on the basis of, we're going to set aside focusing on math purely, and instead turn it into a ideological social studies session. Conceivably, you could be a K-12 student in Seattle and then move on to Boise State University, where you can attain a master's degree in identity politics with a bachelor's in culturally sensitive mathematics, and from there, be readily equipped to take the harmonious message of assessing people on the basis of race out into the real world. Ah, yes, a generation of leaders ready to stop anyone using a calculator to educate them on how every press of a button angers the ancestral sensibilities of anyone with a certain skin tone. You know, it all really does give new meaning to the term long division. As always, thank you for watching.